Welcome to Twice the Terror. I'm Ryan.
And I'm sweating profusely. I'm Kat.
And we are your hosts. That's right, Twice the Terror, bringing you twice the host, twice a month, with twice the spooky ooky goodness. Kat, what are we? We're kind of diverting a little bit today, but
Little.
staying on brand. What are we talking about today?
Well, today we're going to be talking about the legacy of a horror film icon who unfortunately passed this year, May 9th, 2024. We're talking about Roger Corman.
Yeah, we're so as of this recording, it was only a few days ago that
Hmm.
Roger Corman passed. I was scrolling through social media and started seeing people say stuff. It was at like 10 o'clock at night here, our time, when people were starting to be like, hey, RIP Roger Corman and stuff. And it's crazy because if you don't, for anybody out there who maybe doesn't know Roger Corman, which would be shocking to me, but if you've never even heard the name, but you have a lot of just modern filmmaking to you have Roger Corman to thank for that. I
Hmm.
mean, he was a pioneer in the filmmaking field in terms of both artistically and a businessman. He was both sides of his brain,
He
you know.
he very much kicked off like low budget cult
Hmm.
filmmaking. Like he was excellent at creating something that could quickly draw in a crowd while spending as little money as possible.
Yeah. I mean, he didn't love the term like B movie, but he
Mm,
was often like a movie filmmaker, for lack of a better term. I mean, you could say exploitation, but that's, a genre he worked in. It wasn't specific. I mean, this is a guy that worked in every single genre
yeah,
imaginable and was
yeah.
still, he just passed at 98 years old and he was still producing movies. Um, and he started careers of people like Jack Nicholson and
Hmm.
Francis Ford Coppola and Ron Howard, and like was friends with people like John Carpenter, and then started Joe Dante's career. Like all these people came out of the woodwork just to commemorate Roger Corman and remember him. And obviously, like, we have no like connection to him other than we're just fans of film,
Hmm.
and Roger Corman is a huge influence on our stuff, like in terms of just the stuff we enjoy, I would say. And so, Kat, what would you say is like the first memory you have of watching like a Roger Corman movie, a produced movie or a movie he directed or any of that stuff?
So I was actually talking to my dad about this because he had come over with my mom the other day and I had told him that Roger Corman died and he was like, "Oh, out of honor, out of respect for him, we should watch Attack of the Crab People." Like that. But for me, like my favorite movies were like the Poe verse that he did. Like
Hmm.
I loved those like 1960s Edgar Allan Poe adaptations. And I think actually recently, maybe it was The Raven that I was talking to Horror Hour with the Hannahs, and they were like,
Hmm.
"What are your favorite, book to movie adaptations?" And I was like, "I love these like batshit insane remakes of the Poe stories." So those are the ones that stood out to me the most. But also a huge fan of Little Shop of Horrors. I am a old musical slut, an old theater whore. So I live for that still.
Well, I mean, and that's the cool thing about Roger Corman is he spanned so many decades and so many genres that it's like you said, he was always kind of one of those guys that knew he either had his finger on the pulse where he knew where a genre was going, or he knew something was big, and like you said, he tried to make his version of it as cheap as he possibly could.
Yeah.
But that often led to a lot of creativity, and you get movies like Piranha out of it, which
Hmm.
is very clearly a
Yeah,
Jaws ripoff, but in has become its own kind of cult classic. People love that
exactly.
movie. Um, like another good example is Galaxy of Terror and stuff, like movies that, which is maybe one of the first Corman films I saw, where it's, Alien was big and like sci-fi horror and stuff, so let's do a bunch of those. And,
Hmm.
that's when you get somebody like, they'd do a sci-fi movie and they'd hire like James Cameron to do the set dressing. And there's a famous story of James Cameron made a spaceship set using old McDonald's Big Mac containers when they were like made of like styrofoam, and he just
Oh.
glued a bunch of those to the wall and a bunch of doodads and stuff, and that's all the set was. And it, they spray painted it silver, and it looked great, but it cost however much a bunch of Big Macs did back in like
You
the
feed the cast and then
yeah,
you make your set, you know?
yeah. And the good thing about Corman is like, at least from interviews and everything I've ever seen about him and people say, again, I can't say for sure, but he was, yes, a budget guy, and he was always aware of like, let's put some more violence in this, let's put some more sex
Yeah.
in this, let's do what's gonna sell. He was a businessman, but he
Right.
seemed to be a genuinely like decent person too.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you hear about some of those like exploitation filmmakers, and they kind of come off as sleazy, or it's anything for a quick buck type of thing. And Corman never really seemed like that. He was always very soft spoken in interviews,
Mhm.
very intellectual, articulate.
I remember
And
there being this round table conversation once where it was Clive Barker, John Carpenter, Roger Corman. It was a bunch of like film director, horror icon film directors. And that was very much the vibe that I got from Roger Corman, is that he didn't really have it's not that he didn't have a lot to say. It's just when he spoke it had a purpose, and he wasn't
mhm,
speaking just to like fill time. Not saying that they were all doing that, but there were a couple who were. Uh but I think that he was such like a calm character, whereas now we have like these larger than life, like Eli Roth is such a boisterous
mhm,
type of character. Like he himself is a character,
mhm,
and I liked Roger Corman because he's very well known, but he never really. I think in the same way as George Romero as well. Like he
mm.
didn't. He focused on his art, and that is what mattered.
And he also, like we said, he was aware that this is also the film industry. It's
Hmm.
a business too. And so he was always very business savvy and smart. I mean, the original version of Little Shop of Horrors, not the, everyone obviously is more familiar with the Rick Moranis one, but that
Mm,
is based off of an old like 60s black and white movie that they shot in, I believe, 2 days. And it was
yeah.
literally because they filmed it, another movie before, they had a set left, and they had like 2 extra days on their shooting schedule, and they were like, all right, let's just make a movie in 2 days. And that's what they did. That's how Corman worked a lot of time. It's just, oh, we've got some extra money, let's just throw it at another project and put it out there.
Exactly.
um
It's the same thing as like I give John Waters credit for Hairspray, even though Hairspray that we know as the musical is so far from the
right.
original film of Hairspray, but like nah, like that's all my boy Johnny W.
Oh yeah. No, that's exactly it. I mean, you wouldn't have the Little Shop of Horrors musical and then subsequent 80s movie musical.
Yeah,
Like, you wouldn't have that without the original,
without Roger
version.
Corman
Yeah.
and him being
And
like, let's use this set.
yeah, pretty much just him like, hey, how else can we put something else together? And they actually recently did an episode of The Last Drive-In, and it was obviously a few months ago before he passed. They recorded this thing every year called the Drive-In Jamboree, where they go to a drive-in movie theater somewhere in the country, and they set up for like a weekend, and they show a bunch of movies, and Joe Bob's there and Darcy's there, and like all the audience gets to interact, and they film an episode of the show there, and it's all live. And they did one that was a retrospective on Roger Corman, and they brought him out, him and his wife, and
Oh,
he told stories, and like, again, dude's 98 and he was still like sharp as a tack, just like
right.
going on and on telling these great stories. And it's not even like they showed Bucket of Blood, which is a great film.
Hmm.
And a film I hadn't seen until then. Actually, I really loved it, and it was a fun flick that I really recommend people check
Bucket
out.
of Blood is actually another one that my dad and I watched a lot together because we thought, the whole beatnik thing was just
Yeah,
so funny, and like the premise of like I was plaster casting them and
yeah,
turning them into art. We loved it.
it's so good. And
And like who else would have thought of that?
yeah, it's exactly it, right? And then they also showed a film called Death Stalker, which was not great in my opinion, but it was definitely of its times, like 70s, 80s, sword and sandal, Conan the Barbarian style, film, but
Right.
actually I believe came out before Conan. But again, that's Roger Corman being, kind of a visionary and knowing where
Yeah.
things are going and being like, let's do this but cheaper. And he was still making stuff, still producing stuff to this day. It's a shame. It's a shame that we're losing a lot of those kind of guys that there's an era of filmmakers who were both about their art and about the finances.
Mhm.
And I know that's like a weird thing, but now we have this really big divided line where on one side you've got the artists, the people who are like,
Yeah.
I'm a goofy artist and stuff, and then you've got the corporate people who all
Right,
they
and it's
want
like,
is
we will not take risks. We will
right.
not accommodate, your vision or whatever. We need to do what's safe and what I think you're making a really good point that I wanted to make as well about Roger Corman is that it's not just like an era of filmmaker, but it's a type of filmmaker that just
Mm,
has like a real like tenacity. And I think that's what it really takes to be a good filmmaker is like tenacity, but as well as just sheer audacity.
yeah.
Because I mean, Corman grew up in Detroit, same as like Sam Raimi.
Hmm.
He started off making his first job in film because he graduated from like Stanford. Like he had a crazy good degree, I think, and I could be wrong on this, but I think it was like in engineering.
Hmm.
And he changed his mind. He said, I didn't want to do this anymore. And he started working in the mail room at like a local, one of the studios in Hollywood. And like, who goes from the mailman, like the mail, literal mail room guy, to
Yeah.
being a film producer? And I think like that's a real, I don't want to say rags to riches, but it is kind of like a real story of someone who started at the very bottom and worked their way up.
Yeah.
We don't have that anymore, not in the era of, nepo nepo
Yeah.
babies.
And we don't have and Corbin then passed that on. He was the guy who would like Ron Howard is a good example of Ron Howard wanted to direct a movie, and it was like kind of around the time where he was still kind of known for Happy Days and was still kind of like seen as like the kid from the Andy Griffith
Yeah.
show and all that stuff. And Ron Howard was like, okay, if you star in one of my movies, I'll let you direct this movie, like type of thing. And he would make deals with people like that all the time, like James Cameron, another guy who was like set designer, production designer, worked his way up to being the director, although I believe he was fired from the film and he didn't finish it, although they still claim it as his movie. But Piranha 2, The Spawning, was James Cameron's like first movie.
Oh,
And
I
that,
can see the influence for Titanic.
of course, all the flying killer fish. That's
Yeah.
that Leo's running from. That was
Mhm.
totally influenced by
I remember
Piranha
that
2.
vividly.
But that's how he worked. He passed that on, which was, yeah, you didn't get paid a lot, but you got opportunities. And that's,
It's scratch my back, I scratch yours. You don't climb the ladder and then immediately pull the ladder up so no one else can get up there. Roger Corman was always giving people opportunities, like you said. And
yeah,
that's another big thing that I think we're missing in film anymore is the willingness to help someone with their career. And I mean, no one does anything without an ulterior motive.
oh
I
yeah.
think,
I mean, and we're in this world now where making any form of art is this
mm,
weird divide of it's easier for anyone on the planet to make something now, but it's also incredibly difficult to find footing in any of that, whether
yeah,
that's writing, it's filmmaking, it's, video games, whatever it is, like that's kind of where we're at right now. And Roger Corman was this cool kind of down the middle, guy that was riding that line that allowed people to go in both directions. And we just don't. His death is really like I think kind of the official end of an era. Like there will be people that will pass on later than him that worked with him or knew him and things like that, of
mm.
course. But I just don't. You don't see people like him anymore.
It's like Stan Lee.
Mm,
It's like losing someone like Vincent Price, someone
mm,
who reaches that age and like they have such incredible breadth of work
yeah.
and it's incomparable in a lot of ways.
And again, if two yahoos like us can sit here and wax poetic about Roger Corman, imagine the thousands of people who have actually interacted with him, who
Yeah.
he made a difference in their lives in some way. We just kind of wanted to do our little salute to Roger Corman. Like I said, I think there's a lot of people out there. Go, look up some things that people like John Carpenter or Guillermo del Toro or Joe
Dario
Bob Briggs
Argento,
or all the people like that
mm,
who will speak more eloquently than we can about it. But we still also want to talk about it because again, in a weird way, this podcast, which is kind of this weird, scrappy little thing that we do, has a lot of influence from that. Not only in the films we talk about, which are influenced by, Roger Corman or things like that, but also just in that spirit of make it yourself.
yeah,
Go do something, make it yourself, and don't let anybody stop you. And I think that's if you take anything from Roger Corman, that's the message to take. If you want to do something, go do it. Because if Roger Corman can make it happen, if he can have somebody glue Big Mac containers to the wall, or if he can
yes.
film a film in 2 days, like so can you. So
There's no such thing as an original idea anymore, but that doesn't mean that everyone has your idea. And the only
mm,
person who's going to bring your idea to life is you.
yeah,
So, if you're passionate about something, you know, you're just robbing yourself of opportunities, but you're robbing other people of opportunities to like be exposed to something new. So, I don't know. I feel like I spent a lot of time in film school with a lot of men who had audacity but no tenacity when it
mm,
came to their work. And the confidence in which I heard them read their scripts, I'm just saying, if you're listening and you you want to write, honey, do it because the
yeah,
not all the competition out there is good.
yeah, exactly. So Roger Corman, we salute you, R.I.P. And
Yeah, I'll pour one out for the homie.
yeah, exactly. So that was it. Quick little episode. But Kat, is there anything else you'd like to say? Anything else that is on your mind about this, or
I mean, I just keep chanting crab people,
people crap?
crab people. I do really want to watch Attack of the Crab People again because that's what I think of cancer season.
Of
Like
course.
as far as zodiac signs, that whole
Zodiac
season.
signs. Yeah.
Yeah, to clarify, I don't mean like, but that's what I think of whenever it hits that point in June where it's me and my fellow crustacean sisters.
Mhm.
It's Attack of the Crab People.
Yeah. I mean, go watch some Roger Corman stuff. Go watch Bucket of
Please.
Blood. Go watch Dementia 13, which he was Francis Ford Coppola's first film. Um, and like go watch some of the like crazy weird 80s stuff he did. Go enjoy. I mean, the man has like 700 films to his name that he either produced or directed or was involved with in some way. So throw a rock, hit a Roger Corman film, and celebrate the life of a really big, influential artist.
Mm,
So, Kat,
thanks.
do you want to close us out?
All on behalf of Roger Corman in that mailroom in Los Angeles back in, I can't even fathom what year that was. Thank you for listening to our episode this week. If you have any thoughts or anything you want to share about a Roger Corman film that sticks out to you in your memory, something that got you into horror, please feel free to send that out to us, leave a message, and don't get attacked by crab people. I'm really about the
What
crab people today.
I was gonna say, we're focused on the crab people for sure.
Really focused on the crab people today.
But I mean, you gotta watch out for them. You gotta watch out for them.
That
So
can happen to anybody, obviously.
until next time, everyone.
Bye.